Delighted to welcome Norman Brennan to the show. We've not spoken for a while, Norman. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning to you. Well, I actually posted this video yesterday on social media because I was so disgusted.
Yes.
And it clearly was received by many others that felt the same as me because it went viral. And I was just absolutely disgusted. But the sad reality is, Mike, this happens day in and day out, not just in London, but many cities and villages and towns around Britain. Often the officer is alone. Fortunately, there were two officers there, one black female and one white male. And the white male, at one point, was in a headlock and could hardly breathe.
Right.
And what is it that the Black Lives Matter group were talking about? I can't breathe. Well, yesterday afternoon, one of my colleagues couldn't breathe for a little while, and had the black suspect not let go of him, who knows what could have happened.
Yes, we're watching the video now live on YouTube as we speak, because I'm not sure if you filmed it or it came to you by some other means, but it's quite an extraordinary situation. I don't know how much you know about it, Norman. Do you have any idea how it started or what happened, what was going on?
Well, my understanding that there was a suspect that was reported to the police involved in some, I think it was a drugs matter or certainly a local matter there.
Right.
The victim actually pointed out the suspect to the officers. The officers went to deal with the suspect, and as is so often the case, the suspect became aggressive, obstructive, and a scuffle ensued. But within seconds or a minute or two, there were up to 6 or 7 other black people and a white female, and they started attacking the officers. And another one started filming it, jumping around like a banshee, thinking it was funny.
Yeah.
And one of the black officers, some have criticised her, I've got no criticism whatsoever. She was trying to protect the officer that was rolling around on the ground.
Who was getting kicked at this point as well, right?
And some other big black guy that I hope we've identified, if we haven't, I'll send it on social media again, came along and kicked the officer on the ground. What people don't quite understand, Mike, is this. You kick an officer or anybody when they're on the ground in the head, there is a good chance that you could cause an hemorrhage.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned earlier on about the dreadful attacks last weekend that assaulted 35 of our frontline police officers. I believe unless we can get the proper police officers on the beat, and they're the ones that are level 1, they're the ones with shields. We don't have riot squads. What we have is territorial support groups that have the shields.
Right.
I believe that a frontline police officer in London is going to be murdered very soon. That is the anger and viral that some of these Black Lives Matter people have in their system. There's an anger and a hatred I haven't seen for a long time.
Well, this is, I mean, as you and I have seen many years ago, Norman, these are the kind of people that would take part in all sorts of different demonstrations. We had the anti-globalist movement, you know, the guys that would wear balaclavas and try and hurl all sorts of missiles at the police and anybody else that was trying to stop them from marching on, you know, big corporate headquarters. We've had the Extinction Rebellion crowd who seem to be a little bit more, shall we say, peaceful, but however still have this anarchistic kind of tendency and are quite happy to vandalise government buildings. We've seen it on the night that Boris Johnson was elected, where you had a sort of vile crowd chanting outside of Downing Street. You know, I would guarantee you that many of these people are the same people, but the trouble with the Black Lives Matter movement is that it has also attracted what I would regard as a criminal element who are anti-police, who spend their lives committing crime, probably dealing drugs, and they see this as a great opportunity to crack a few policemen's heads.
That's exactly what they do. It's always the snipe and the swipe, and we saw last week at the officers that were level 3. These officers were there with flat caps and helmets, predominantly flat caps, because they're community-based police officers.
Right.
They're the ones that try and walk the beats, that put their hands out to the community, work with all communities, and are their friends. And what some of these rebel feral elements forget is that police officers are members of the public. So Robert Peel once said, the police are the public are the police. So what they're doing is they're kicking what the public have voted in, that is police officers, both black and white, men and women, that risk their lives day in and day out. And let's not miss the focus on what this is really all about. I believe it was an excuse and not a reason. We keep on hearing these chants, Mike, of no justice, no peace.
Yeah.
Well, it happened over in Mississippi or whatever, where a rogue police officer that the world's police service have condemned.
Yes.
And he and 3 others have been arrested.
In Minneapolis,
Yep, it's Minneapolis. So 4 are in custody for that particular death. They've been charged with a homicide.
Yeah.
What further justice is it they want? Or is this an excuse to go on the streets of London and Britain, attack police officers, loot shops, and burn down businesses, often with their own communities? And the caveat to that, Mike, is this. I truly pray that I hope I'm wrong in my view, is we are heading towards anarchy on the streets of Britain. And when I say that could be days or in the next few weeks, that's how serious this matter is.
The only thing I think that's saving us at the moment, I have to say, Norman, is the weather. You know, I know that might sound a bit trite, but quite frankly, you know, revolution happens in the sunshine in this country. And if it stays rainy like this, I don't think this weekend will be too difficult. But if the weather improves, I would imagine that some of these bozos will think it's another great opportunity to get out there marching around in the streets. Forget about COVID-19. But the other interesting aspect of what may happen this weekend is that there have been other groups who call themselves patriots who will come down to London, they say, and protect the monuments. Now, in that situation, the police have got a massive problem.
You're right. And I don't want to stoke up any issues here, but I got a DM yesterday evening that I don't know where the Nelson Mandela statue is, but it was intimated to me that people were looking at, the right wing are looking at dragging that off its plinth.
Well, that's ridiculous. Well, I mean, how can you argue that people shouldn't be dragging statues off their plinths if you then go and drag a statue off a plinth?
I completely agree. My point is the antagonistic behaviour by some of the black community feral element is beginning to wind up the people that we want off of our streets. They're the right wing anarchists.
Well, the point is it will wind people up, particularly if the police are not seen to be doing their job.
Well, that's exactly it. Well, I posted to the Metropolitan Police last night that Cressida Dick and her senior management team must get a grip of this. And I will be posting to Boris Johnson today and the Home Secretary saying that I believe that there's going to be anarchy on the streets unless the police can take control.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen. And if that doesn't happen, Mike, I'll be quite honest with you, I've looked at the senior management within the Met and some other forces, and these people are completely detached with reality. Yeah. Many frontline officers and even retired officers and the public think all they're interested in is getting the next rank up, getting their knighthoods and QPMs, and being nice and friendly and woolly, cuddly and pink and fluffy. Well, they're not the types of people we want. We want people that are leaders, that have passion, that have views and a vision, and are not prepared and are not frightened of making tough decisions. If they can't do it, maybe the whole senior management team of the Metropolitan Police should be removed, and we have military leaders that have got those qualities and can lead officers. Because many frontline Metropolitan Police officers, I'm telling you, Mike, have said to me, Norman, we feel as though we in the Metropolitan Police are the lions led by donkeys.
Yes.
Now, that is a terrible indictment on their senior management.
Well, it really is, because at the end of the day, I think I saw, did I not, a bunch of police officers complaining last week that they were not properly protected by their leaders, that they were not given the right equipment, that they were not able to do the work that they wanted to do. And that was why so many of them basically were seen running away, which was an awful scene for me. And I mean, I'm not blaming individual officers here, but to run away from a mob of people running towards you when you're supposed to be policing a demonstration seems to me to be waving the white flag.
You're absolutely right. And some of these officers were kicked up the backside.
Yeah.
I cannot recall in my 31 years where I would have accepted being kicked up the backside.
No.
I've certainly been outnumbered, don't get me wrong. I've been there when you put that call out and they're all coming at you, and you're on your own and you fear. But the thing is, as we know, police officers don't run away. At that particular time, they were probably told by the senior management to actually do that. There were bottles being thrown at officers that were black and white, male or female. And again, Mike, like I said earlier on about being kicked in the head, if one of those bottles had hit an officer at the back of the head, they didn't have their protective helmets on, they could have received a serious injury.
Yeah.
35 officers were injured, 2 seriously. One was knocked off of a horse. Apparently she hit a traffic bollard.
She did, yeah. Yeah, because the horse was bolting, having had a bike thrown at it by one of these scumbags.
Absolutely. And the biggest gripe that I've got is this. is that police officers police without fear or favour. And these Black Lives Matter movement have demanded that we in Britain kneel down to them and their cause. Well, let me tell you this. Yesterday evening at 6 o'clock when they wanted to do that, I stood up. I stood proud alongside my police colleagues throughout Britain, and we will kneel to nobody. But let me tell you when we do kneel, Mike, and that's this, is when black boys have shot or stabbed another black boy, when black men have shot another black man through the drug turf war, my colleagues are kneeling down, putting pads over the bullet holes and the stab wounds, trying to save that person's life. We do enough kneeling down to the black community. We certainly won't be getting down on our knees now. And I have told the police service, stand strong, stand straight and rigid. You do not kneel to any sections of the community. We police them all fairly, properly, and that's what the police oath is all about.
Yes, absolutely, well said. And Hackney Police have said that they will be making arrests as a result of this video, so we've got you to thank for that. But also, what do you make of this, right? An interview on Channel 4 yesterday with Cathy Newman and the Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu, who basically said that had he not been in the police, he probably would have been on the march.
I'll be quite honest with you, I've got friends of mine in the Met, and he's a very highly regarded police officer, so I will try and guide my criticism to personal views. Is that I felt that the letter was good, but why was it sent? Many of us believe it's no more than fawning to the black community and the criminal element amongst them. Of course he's going to get his knighthood. That is very, very safe. But we don't want police officers writing those sort of letters just to appease those that he and the Cressida Dick know and believe that we are one controversial death of a black member of the public in Britain away from riots. So that is the crux of all of this, Mike, is that the Met Police and many chief constables know that if there's a controversial death involving a black suspect in any of those areas, the likelihood there would be riots. Now, what way is that to run the British Police Service, that we appease and write letters of fawnment to these black groups with often got feral elements in them, and we deal with enough gun and knife crime in the black community because we're frightened of upsetting them in case they go out, attack police officers, loot shops, burn them down, often in their own communities. Now that is anarchy, and that is the message that Britain must understand, is that we police without fear and favour. There should be no favours to anybody. If we get it wrong, anything within policing, we try and put it right. At this moment in time, we're dealing with someone that was killed nearly 4,500 miles away. What has that got to do with Britain?
Yeah.
There's been no controversial death since Mark Duggan. He was lawfully killed. There were unlawful riots. I can see that happening now. And the British Police Service, we've built bridges, we've climbed mountains to the black community, and we're being abused and insulted and assaulted for it.
Yes. Norman, very well said. Thank you so much for joining us. I think that message will be resonating loud and clear across this country as people think about what is going on. We'll be talking to Sean Bailey, who is the mayoral candidate for the Tory party. He's also a black British man. We'll get his view on what Norman Brennan has just said. Bridges have been built, mountains have been climbed, and yet police officers in this country are still being abused, they're being attacked. And one of these days, one of them could be far more seriously injured than that poor woman who was knocked off her horse the other night outside of Downing Street.